So thank you for coming to today's NSF working group meeting. We're going to be talking about SciENcv and a related topic, ORCID. And so this is what the NSF requires you to use for your biosketches as well as your current and pending support. SciENcv and ORCID, though, are broader, so if you decide you don't want to apply for NSF funding, that doesn't mean you get out of using these. Okay. So let's start with what is SciENcv. It stands for Science Experts Network Curriculum Vitae. And like I said, for the NSF, this is used to prepare biosketch and current and pending support. Same thing for other agencies. So for the NSF right now, you are required to use SciENcv. If you are applying for NIH funding, the requirement to use SciENcv was supposed to take effect May 2025. Things have been just slightly chaotic. So that is being delayed, expected to actually be implemented in early 2026. If you're looking at USDA funding, you've been required to use that since fall 2025, a few months ago. IES was requiring it, but recently disappeared from SciENcv. I think that's a representation of how their grant funding is going. And even outside of that, a lot of other agencies either accept or require one of the formats that's in SciENcv. So the Department of Energy strongly recommends the NSF format. If you're in College of Integrated Science and Engineering or CSM, you might recently have applied for CCI funding, which is state, but they require NSF format. And so that brings us back to SciENcv. Right now, these first three agencies have their own forms implemented in SciENcv, but SciENcv is working on implementing common forms, which are even better because there'll be one form that's shared between multiple agencies. So if you come back in a year, this might look a little different. In fact, if you look under the NIH section, you'll see a draft of that common form currently. Okay, so that's SciENcv. The other thing we're looking at is ORCID, which stands for Open Researcher and Contributed ID. The other thing that you sometimes see this called is a DPI, or Digitally Persistent Identifier. And the thing about ORCID is, I like to tell people, it's your professional social security number. Okay? It stays the same even as you change institutions, as you change positions, and even if you decide to change your name, your ORCID ID is not changing. Okay? And what it does is it tracks your professional outputs. For most of us, that's papers. It also tracks your positions. And the key thing about an ORCID is you should never, ever, ever have more than one, just like a social security number. Okay? So if you made one back in graduate school, do not go make another one, because each author on a paper can only be associated with one ORCID. So if you had one in graduate school and those papers are associated with that ORCID, and then later you make a new one and you're like, hey, that paper in graduate school is racking me up citations, I want to claim it. They're going to say, nah, that's already associated with another ORCID ID. And you're going to have a mess. Now, we do frequently have people who come in and say, well, I had an ORCID ID 10 years ago in grad school and I don't have that email account anymore. There is a web page and a contact information specifically for that case. Please use it. Okay? So if you don't have an ORCID, right now, you lost your access, do that instead of making a new one. I promise you it'll make your life easier. So why am I talking about both of these together? And that's because NSPM, National Security Presidential Memo, I believe that stands for 33, required all agencies to implement policies connected to DPIs by January 2022. That's in the past. Let's say not all of them hit that. So the White House Office of Science and Technology Public Access Policy Memo required agencies to require ORCID or some other DPI for research grants by the end of calendar year 2025. Okay? So if you're paying attention to NOFOs, you're starting to see that all over the place. As of when I looked this up, if you are applying for NSF, NIH, CDC, AHRQ, Department of Energy, NASA Science Directorate, your application will be thrown out if you don't have ORCID on there. Okay? And since the end of 2025 is rapidly approaching, we expect that to be expanding. Okay? So all of these require the ORCIDs. Where do they go? Okay? generally on your biosketch, which you have to generate with SciENcv. And conveniently, the reason why we're tackling these together is you can actually pull data from ORCID for your SciENcv biosketch. So you don't have to duplicate your data. Sound good?
So who is, is this limited to senior personnel only, or is this everybody?
So in terms of biosketches, senior and key personnel for most agencies. Okay. Agencies have slightly different rules, especially as you get into like AHRQ is kind of for some healthcare related stuff that can be a little bit project managers, that sort of thing.
For me, example, I don't have an ORCID, but I'm writing an NSF grant. Do I need to go ahead, but I'm not going to be doing any research. Should I go ahead and get one? I'm just going to be like an administrator, coordinator, type of project manager position.
So if you're going to be listed as senior or key personnel,
Then I'll need one.
then you'll need one. If administrators often aren't listed as senior or key personnel, so they sometimes go under other personnel, and then you wouldn't need one. Okay.
That makes sense.
Okay. So let's start with ORCID. Okay. So this is ORCID, okay, and actually I will go ahead and log out just so you can see this. When you come to the ORCID page, it looks something like this. You do have to associate it with your institution, your affiliation. So once you have that set up with your JMU email, JMU actually JMU does actually connect it with your single sign-on. So that same Okta two-factor authentication, username and password. Okay. And this is what your account looks like when you log in, if you've never seen one before. And you can see these are my past affiliations, past emails I've been associated with the accounts. So right now, the one I have is JMU. In terms of setting up ORCID, there's a lot of stuff you can put here. If you want to put your biography, you can. The key things to look at, 3 key areas you want to have completed before you work on your biosketch. Okay, the first one is employment. Where all have you been employed? Okay. Education and qualifications. Where did you get your degrees? Okay. You can put professional activities if you want. If you have past funding, it's good to put that there since it can draw that data. But then works, okay? So what publications have you had, okay? For all of these, the way that you would add things is through this button over here that says add. If you don't see that, you're probably either not logged in or not, your affiliation isn't active, okay? Different fields operate differently. In physics, I would say a lot of our journals actually require an ORCID ID when you submit, and so then it just kind of automatically shows up here and I don't have to do anything. Other fields are differently. The easiest way usually to add it is through this add DOI. You could go to your journal publication, find the DOI, put it in there, and then it'll retrieve the work details. You can edit each one. So I know, especially with like book chapters in the humanities, publications in non-English journals can get a little bit screwy. So if you need to edit it, this will let you edit it. And I always recommend editing problems on ORCID because this is what you're going to pull into for your NSF biosketch. You can edit it on the NSF biosketch in SciENcv, but then it'll be wrong the next time you draw from it. So just fix it in ORCID so it's fixed forever. Okay. So I would say definitely these 3, and then I've never done the funding, but if you want to do the funding to draw for your current and pending other support, feel free to do that. I could pause to give you guys time to work on the ORCID, or I could start talking about SciENcv. What would you prefer? No, that is one big difference, is that actually your ORCID ID is how people can look up all your papers. So if someone's like, well, is the JMU, person the same as someone with the same name at University of Tallahassee? Yeah. So yes. You could be like that, who was the guy that like was giving out his social security number because he, like, his security company said that you could handle it? Okay. So once you have your ORCID kind of put together, you can go to SciENcv. I'm actually going to log out. Okay. We'll just go to the SciENcv homepage. The SciENcv was initially an NIH thing, which is why when you go to it, there's the NIH National Library of Medicine, big at the top. There's sometimes some confusion about that if folks are applying for NSF or other funding, but it is now shared, okay? And if you go to login, the two main ways that people log in are through ERA Commons. That is the login credentials if you're applying for NIH funding, or NSF, Science Foundation, that would be your research.gov credentials. Since this is an NSF working group, you all probably have that. There are more options here, which it's not going to show me because it knows that I recently logged in with NSF. But if you have, say, login credentials for login.gov or one of the other government databases, whatever you want to call it, systems, you may be able to log in with that. So when you log into SciENcv, this is the main page. The other place that people sometimes end up at is this My NCBI homepage, which is sometimes causes people some panic, especially if they are looking for NSF funding. To get back to SciENcv, it's down here in the corner there. Okay. But when you log in, this is the first thing that you should see. And the most important thing here, at least at the beginning, is the My Profile. Okay, you should put in your name, you should put in your title and department, but the most important thing here is your ORCID ID, okay, that you just got, okay, or hopefully updated. So, if you need to edit it, you can hit the edit, okay. My ORCID ID is already in there, so it's not really going to help me do anything. It should say something like select here to link your ORCID ID, something like that. And if you click that link, then you log in to ORCID, and then after you do that, your ORCID ID should show up here. Okay, so how you use SciENcv is you click this plus for new document. You have to give it a document name, so, you know. And then you need a document type. So here's where you see the currently available types. So for NSF, you need to use SciENcv. This is required for your biosketch, for your current and pending other support. You can see USDA here. You can see NIH. If you're applying for NIH right now, there's a biosketch, fellowship biosketch, and current, and then the previews of the common forms, which we expect to be required starting in a few months. Okay. And eventually, hopefully, there will just be two drop-downs, a biosketch common form and a current pending other support common form as they synchronize. So we're going to look today at the NSF biosketch. Okay, so we can select that. And then the third thing, if you really feel like you want to duplicate putting in all your information, you can do that. But we just did all that work getting our ORCID set up. We used it to link because it's required to have your ORCID ID on there. So let's get data from ORCID. Okay, so use an external source and then select ORCID. If you're a biomedical researcher and all of your research is also in ERA Commons, you could select that one. I'm not, so I have no information in ERA Commons. Okay. And then we select Create, and it usually takes a few minutes. Okay. That one was fast. Nod when you've got something. Do you have something?
Sorry?
Do you have one, or are you waiting for it to generate?
No, it's done. I
Okay.
selected create.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, So it's great, it's not perfect, so anything that has this little red circle with an exclamation point means that you're missing something in there, okay? You can see here I'm missing position title, okay, and some other information there, so I'll say, I'm just going to throw some stuff in there. I'm just going to throw information in there. Okay. It should hopefully have pulled your professional preparation from ORCID and also your appointments and positions from ORCID. Okay. This one sometimes gets a little funky because the thing up top and this one, okay, can be a little duplicative, so you often have to do a little bit of editing. Okay. And then where things come in is these products down here, okay? So this is where you're going to list your papers that are most relevant, okay? And so for the NSF, you can choose up to 5, and then other significant papers or other products, you can select up to 5, okay? So in order to select, you hit this button, and then this is where people send me angry emails, like, didn't I set up ORCID so that I don't have to put all this information in? I see my bibliography, there's nothing there. Where'd all that ORCID information go? Just click ORCID, that little tab there, and then it'll populate everything from ORCID and can select this, continue. There it is. Okay. The reason why SciENcv is generally required by these agencies is because of the certification option. And they're probably going to be expanding the certifications as new regulations come out, if you've been paying attention to the research security situation that's been changing. So when you finish your biosketch, you can click download PDF. If you cannot click that, that means that there's a little circle, red circle somewhere that needs to be revised. They're not going to let you download a PDF until you've addressed all the problems. If you click download PDF, it pops up the certification requirement. You certify. And here it is, and it's already been formatted according to the NSF rules in terms of font size, margins on the paper, yada, yada, yada. This is a PDF, so you will literally take this PDF exactly as is. Yes, even though it is splitting this line off, it's fine. And then turn around and upload that straight into research.gov. Okay? Everything is already compliant as far as the NSF is concerned. Okay? Now I will say sometimes when other agencies say that they require the NSF format, they might add extra requirements on there. So the only one that I've seen recently with the CCI requires NSF format and has a 2-page limit. So if you are doing this for something else that has a page limit, you might need to remove some of the earlier positions. So NSF allows you to drop things off after a certain period of time. I believe it's 5 years, but don't quote me. Or you might have to change the products you're selecting to be shorter within the page limit. NSF itself, though, doesn't care. Okay. Okay. This is also, it's the same process for generating your current and pending other support, and very similar process. Do remember for that, you are required to put your current proposal on there, which is really annoying because that means you can't finalize it until you know what your budget is for your current one, so on and so forth. I will say there is a process within SciENcv to enable someone else to prepare your biosketch for you or your current and pending support document for you, but they won't be able to do the certification. So every PI needs to do their certification. And that means you could prepare everything for him up to the certification stage. And when you've completed it, I haven't seen it from the delegate side, but there's some sort of button that says, I'm done, tell the person to certify it. And then they get a notification to log in and certify it.
Yeah, let me tell him he needs to delegate me.
So that is how that works. So, questions?
That was under account settings?
Yep, account settings. If you go to the upper right here to account settings.